So Francis Ngannou has revealed that there's a rematch clause in the contract for his fight against Tyson Fury, meaning that if Fury were to somehow lose, he would have the option to fight Francis Ngannou again. Now, I actually don't have an issue with a rematch clause in the contract per se, because even though Ngannou has a tiny chance of winning, there's still a chance. He's a big, strong man. He can punch, and it would be very embarrassing if Tyson Fury got caught and there wasn't a rematch clause in the contract, and Ngannou maybe just went off and fought other boxers or went back into MMA, and Fury would have that black mark on his record for the rest of his days. That would be very detrimental for his reputation. So I understand the rematch clause. However, this provides further proof, if you actually needed any at all, that Tyson Fury had absolutely no intention of fighting Alexander Usyk. Why do I say this? Well, because Alexander Usyk is a former undisputed cruiserweight world champion, Olympic gold medalist, current unified heavyweight champion. He wanted to fight Tyson Fury in an undisputed match where Fury stood to lose his WBC belt. And yet Fury acted like he didn't want a rematch clause in the contract for that fight. But yet against Ngannou, a guy who's never had a boxing match in his life, the much easier fight, where his WBC belt isn't even on the line, so he can't lose that, in that scenario, he wants a rematch clause. How does that make sense? You have no rematch clause for the much riskier fight, but you have a rematch clause for the easier fight. It's very straightforward. Tyson Fury never wanted to fight Usyk. He was moving the goalpost the whole time, moved the goalposts on the location, moved the goalposts on the split, and moved the goalposts on the rematch clause, which his own team put in the contract in the first place. It was a way of trying to shake Alexander Usyk off by making the terms of the deal as unappealing as possible. And I mentioned this in a previous video a few months ago. Like father, like son. When John Fury was called out by Mickey Theo a couple years ago for a charity boxing match, John Fury initially agreed to the charity boxing match. But then, after apparently running a background check on Mickey Theo and discovering that he could actually fight a bit, all of a sudden came out and said, no, I'm not going to have a boxing match with you. It's got to be all in, no holds barred, gypsy style, on the hard road. Arr! Started doing all this shouting and screaming, moving the goalposts and changing the terms of everything. The guy asked you for a charity boxing match. Where's all this no holds barred stuff coming from? John Fury's excuse was that he didn't want to take his shirt off in front of a big crowd of people. He felt it was embarrassing. That was his actual excuse. But in the very next breath, he talked about fighting Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis and all these people, presumably with no shirt on. And then more recently, of course, we saw him with no shirt on in Saudi Arabia, in the ring, doing all the tough guy antics, threatening Jake Paul. So he never had any issue taking his shirt off in front of a crowd of people. That was nonsense. He just didn't want to fight Mickey Theo in a boxing match for whatever reason. And he needed some type of excuse to get out of it whilst maintaining his reputation as a hard man. So what he did is started changing the terms of the fight, trying to make it as unappealing to Mickey Theo as possible. Remember, John Fury has half blinded a man in a street fight. And with Tyson Fury, same thing with the Usyk fight. They could have had the fight in Saudi Arabia. All this talk about stadiums needing to be built in the summer, it's all nonsense. There are loads of venues in Saudi Arabia that could have hosted the Usyk Fury fight. You don't need to do it in some giant stadium. I can only imagine that was just an excuse concocted by Frank Warren for reasons of having plausible deniability. Tyson Fury reportedly was asking for something like 120 million from the Saudis. Maybe the Saudis turned around and said, look, that's not a realistic number. The only way that would even be remotely possible was if we did the fight in a giant stadium and charged everybody $1,000 a ticket. Then it might make sense for us to actually pay you that much. And Frank Warren goes running to the media. That's it, we've got the excuse. They don't have such a giant stadium in the country until summer. So there's the excuse for us to, that kind of thing. The reality is they could have had it in a normal arena, just like Usyk Joshua 2, just like Joshua Ruiz 2, and still got paid a boatload of money. Usyk signed up for that. Tyson Fury didn't. That's the bottom line. And the whole stuff about fighting in Wembley, again, this was all just to try and shake Alexander Usyk off by making the deal as unappealing to him as possible. Because if you really want to fight, that's not how you behave. You don't move the goalposts all the time, and you don't do that. If John Fury really wanted that boxing match with Mickey Theo, he wouldn't have started talking about no holds barred and this is real beef and you wait till I see you at one of these boxing shows in London. He wouldn't have done all that if he was actually up for that boxing match. So yeah, Fury and Ngannou having a rematch clause in the contract, okay, whatever. Anything can happen, I guess. But it just further proves that Fury never wanted to fight Usyk. The whole rematch clause stuff was just smoke and mirrors. If Usyk had agreed to that, Fury would have found another reason to move the goalposts. And Frank Warren would have had more excuses prepared. I mean, these guys are something else.